Hey everyone, welcome to this video about a healthy reading practice. I'm Anya Esma, and 3 months ago I made a video about how I wanted to improve my own reading practice and tackle the issues that I had identified with regards to reading. In this video I want to share with you how I myself built an authentic and healthy reading practice so that hopefully you can maybe integrate elements of this into your practice or just in general reflect about how your reading practice feels to you, where it may feel uncomfortable, where it may feel amazing, and together we can develop a good, healthy relationship to reading and to books in general. So what do I mean when I say healthy? What is important for me here is that I cannot identify whether your practice is unhealthy or healthy. You can only do that yourself, which means if you feel uncomfortable after reading, if you feel overwhelmed after reading a chapter or a book regularly, and if you feel uneasy or not happy after reading, and it is not related to the content, the book itself isn't depressing, you are just getting thrown into a weird mindset after reading, then that may mean that you have an unhealthy relationship with reading itself. And we are going to talk about the struggles and the solutions that there are to this issue. 3 months ago, I decided that I finally wanted to do something about my feeling that I was reading too little. However, I want to make clear as well that reading too little isn't the only issue that there can be with a healthy reading practice. As I said, maybe you are reading too much, maybe you feel overwhelmed after reading, maybe you feel like you are taking too many notes, maybe you don't feel like reading is inspiring to you anymore, or maybe you just fly over the pages, don't retain anything, and don't feel quite happy about that as well. So identify your issue, and then maybe listening to my path, my struggles, and my solutions can help you. If you haven't seen the video from 3 months ago, that's okay. I'm going to quickly outline what the issues that I identified were and what my solutions were. However, if you do want the whole picture of my reading practice and of my struggles back then, a little snapshot of my issue, then do go ahead and watch that video first if you want to. I will put the link to it down below. So let us talk about what I read, if I read, my new unexpected struggles that came up and how I faced them and how I kind of restructured my core beliefs about reading and about the joy of reading and how that changed my perspective and allowed me to shift into a new relationship with my reading practice in general. And hopefully you can draw something for your own practice from this and maybe talk about your own struggles in the comments and how you overcame them so that we have a nice amount of examples so that people can identify with this. Because I know reading is kind of a sensitive topic to a lot of people because it can be so related to your ego. And I feel when we struggle with it, we are sometimes not honest with ourselves. Seeing as many examples of people being honest about it is very helpful, I think. At least it is to me. All right, so the 4 main issues that I identified back then were that I have an anxiety about not retaining enough when I read, so that I excessively take notes. I am afraid of inspiration overdrive, which means that I get too inspired, too many things at once, and I just lose myself. My Kindle has a huge backlog that was kind of weighing on me. There were outside influences and my own ego of how well I have to perform. And this actually turned out to be the main issue of it all. And I will get to that in a little bit as well. How my performance-driven attitude towards reading was really detrimental to a healthy reading practice. And I think maybe you can identify with this. Maybe in school you had to read a certain amount of pages in a certain amount of time, or maybe you tell yourself that you have to read a certain amount of books every year. All of this is related to performance. And for me, that just wasn't working. My motivation essentially wasn't pure when I started this. My motivation came from a place of telling myself that I read too little and that I was less than because of that, which means that my attitude became performance driven. I wanted to read 1 page a minute, or so and so many pages an hour, or so and so many books a month, a year, whatever. Any goal like that is quantity related kept me from stepping into a true joy of reading, a joy of reading that relates to the quality of what you are reading and to how it feels to you what you are reading. And of course, depending on why you read, whether it is for your job, for university, or for your personal life, there will be different motivations behind all of this. And you can reflect on that and reflect on whether those motivations are good. What I did was I took the motivation that school and university had given to me, which was you have to read so and so much in a certain amount of time, and took that into my personal reading practice, which is much more about spirituality, about self-exploration, about learning, inspiration, gaining new ideas for myself. And that had to be my motivation at the end of the day, not how many pages a minute I read. And this was the biggest shift that occurred in those 3 months in my mind. And how I got to that shift, I will tell you later. It's actually kind of funny and kind of weird, but I will get to that. First, I want to talk to you about the solutions that I had suggested back then in my old video and whether they actually worked for me. So my first solution was to read fiction and nonfiction side by side. This worked quite well. I am reading nonfiction, Persephone Rising, which is a very good book about the archetypes of Zeus, Demeter, Persephone, and Dionysus, and kind of brings it all together into helping you self-develop a good sense of purpose, a sense of being not afraid of change, a sense of nourishment and of enjoyment of life. It is an amazing book, so I recommend it to anyone. But anyways, I was reading this as the nonfiction book, and then besides that, I was reading several fictional books. I was reading Witch of Portobello, and I was reading Princess Ai, which was a manga that I read years ago as a teenager. And I highly recommend that you reread simple books that really made you happy. And Princess Ai is one of those books that made me really happy. It just lights me up. The looks in it, the story in it, it is very adorable and very inspirational to me. So that was great. Witch of Portobello by Paulo Coelho. It was all right. It was a Paulo Coelho book. I'll say that. So it was inspiring, definitely. And reading them side by side really helped me when I was not in the right mindset to read a nonfiction book to kind of go for something easier. I will also talk later about how I read now, because it has kind of shifted into a place where I kind of pick and choose from different books to get the most inspiration and get the happiest reading result for myself. So if you want to think about what fictional and non-fictional books you could read side by side to make it easier for yourself, go ahead. Another solution I had was book clubs and book reviews as a motivation. I'm not in a book club. I do put book reviews on my channel, but none of that really motivated me to keep reading, because that again would have been a little bit performance driven and kind of outside perspectives influencing my own reading practice, and I did not want that to happen. I had a reward system that was also performance driven. As you can see, there is a theme here of anything relating to performance being bad for my own healthy reading practice. And I will get to what I replace the performance aspect with to keep myself motivated anyway. Then I also wanted to think about what actually makes me want to read more. I didn't do a whole lot of shadow work around this, even though I had planned to, but I kind of organically stepped into a new perspective on all of this. I will also talk about that when I get to how my beliefs have shifted, but I definitely recommend that you connect to the purpose of you wanting to read more so that you don't fall into the trap that I kind of fell into, where you default to a belief system that is about performance, or that is about whatever your reading practice shouldn't be about, whatever makes your reading practice feel intense, not good, uncomfortable. I also set a goal of reading 15 minutes a day. That does not work either, honestly. The solutions I made up back then did not work so well for myself. It, of course, depends. If you have to read for university, having a 15 minutes per day rule, or even more than that, is definitely important. But for my personal practice, I need to flow into it, and then I will read more than 15 minutes. But forcing myself, it doesn't quite work. Now, the last solution I had was brilliant. I have to give myself credit, which was to reduce my phone time. That seems very obvious, but what I love about this is that now when I wake up at night, when I am awake during the day and I feel this pull towards going to my phone, I will often instead pick up a poetry book. And reading poetry was kind of unthinkable to me beforehand. It just wasn't part of my practice, probably because reading poetry isn't about performance. It is about connecting on a soul level with what you read, and to think about what you read, and to maybe even take it into your own creative writing practice. And that just wasn't a part of my reading practice. And replacing my phone with poetry, it's one of the greatest things I have ever done in my life, I have to tell you, and it was immensely helpful and also helped me reconnect to the joy of reading. So an attitude I really had to shed was the 1 page a minute, so and so many books a month. Having too much choice and thus feeling like reading was a to-do, just like in university, just like in school, especially when it comes to the 15 minutes a day reading rule. I couldn't let reading become a to-do. I don't know what it's like for you. It just sucks the joy out of it for me. It needs to come organically. I need to flow into it because I legitimately want to be inspired, and that is the key. Now, before we get to my core beliefs, I want to tell you about something that happened that really shifted my perspective. And this is just to show how small these triggers can be. Because what happened was that I was watching a video by Harmony Nice, one of my favorite YouTubers. I talk about this a little bit in my depth year video. I just did a depth year update, which also has some information about the reading, and go over there. Watch that. I'll put the link in the description. What was happening was that I was watching a Harmony Nice life update video, and she offhandedly talked about how she had been giving herself a lot of time to read and how good it was for her. And something inside me, when I heard that, just clicked. And the reason I am telling you this is because I don't want you to be afraid of these basic happenings. Sometimes it can be easier than you think. If you are receptive, if you are open to listening to what is going on around you and really consume it, sometimes the solution naturally comes to you. And the fact that I had preparing my mindset for a few months already and then heard her say that sentence, it was just, I can't describe it. But something in me just changed, and I realized that the joy of reading had been gone from my life for a long time because of my performance-driven attitude. I did not realize this until like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. And before that, I went on a very tough path of kind of belittling myself that I'm not sticking to the plans that I made about reading and, not reading as much as I wanted to. And it took that moment of realization that I forgot what joyful reading was. I feel like Bob Ross here talking about the joy of painting. But it took that moment for me to really realize and step into a new mindset and really go through that mindset and paradigm shift within myself and build new core beliefs that help me towards a healthier practice. And that is exactly what I want to talk about now, what my beliefs are about my practice and how it has evolved. The first core belief that I have in order to make my reading practice healthy is that I need to give myself time to digest information. That means that I really engage with what I am reading, not with excessive note-taking, not by flying through the pages and barely retaining anything, but by at the end of each chapter, at the end of each page, or when something comes to me, I really connect to the text, I write it down. And then in the end, I have my true connection with the text. I don't have every single information in the text, but I have what truly connects me with it and what inspired me in it. And to give myself time to think about that, how the text resonates with me, and writing that down is the first core practice of my own healthy reading practice. The second part is to really integrate what I've learned in order to bring myself to a new level. That could mean that when I read something in a book and it is kind of an intense realization, or it leads me on an intense path of shadow work, that I maybe take a break on the book until I have thought more about this and feel like I really understood what I just read and integrated that into my life. The third core belief, of course, this is obvious. I cannot permit myself to slip into that mindset of how many pages did I read? Did I read enough pages? Did I read objectively enough books this year, this month, this week? That is a mindset for personally me is terrible. Let me know if it's different for you. I'm very, very interested to see whether this is actually motivating and lush for someone else, because it was the biggest block I had. So tell me, if you have this performance-driven attitude towards reading and it's really working for you, I really want to hear about it. The fourth core thing, instead of my phone, I pick up a book. Already talked about this, super important to me. The fifth kind of realization is that honestly, I don't feel overwhelmed anymore now that I have shed all of that performance bullshit. Because honestly, I don't excessively take notes anymore. I don't feel like I have to retain everything anymore because I connect with these books on a deeper level, not just on an intellectual level. And I think that could be something for you to think about. Do you connect with books on an intellectual level or on a soul level? And which of the two do you want? Is there a good balance between them? Think about that. I want to say that I did break my depth year rule and bought a book before I was finished with my reading stack. I bought this little beauty, Women Who Run with the Wolves, finally, and I can't wait to start it. But I still have Persephone Rising to read. I'm slowly trudging along in that book, which is amazing. So I shouldn't say trudging. And I am looking forward to reading Women Who Run with the Wolves very shortly after that. So I am now actually only reading nonfiction, Persephone Rising, along with poetry. And it is working amazingly for me. I'm very happy, and I am finally giving myself the free time. And that is maybe something you can take away as well. Give yourself the free time to read. Don't default to reading, but consciously decide that you are going to read and take what you can from what you are reading. When it comes to conscious living, I am also running a Patreon and I have my Instagram account, so feel free to check those out. I will put the links below. I wish you the greatest of weeks, the greatest of days. Thank you.